So today we are very excited to have you all join the Paterson Museum as we host Frank Blesso, and he will be presenting the foundation of the Paterson Great Falls National Historical Park. Now, Frank was involved from the early stages of developing the park into what we know today as the National Park here in Paterson. And so we're very happy to have him kind of tell us from the firsthand perspective how everything worked out and how it developed into what we know today. Frank Blesso, who you also see here on your screen, is the former Paterson Redevelopment Director and also a consultant. And he was a charter member of the Great Falls Development Corporation as well. So Frank's been really very excited to share this all with you. We've been working together on this presentation for the last couple of weeks. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started. Frank, let me just pull up your slides. And okay.
Thank you, Heather. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to talk to folks about two people that really had a very fundamental role in the creation of the national park. First, this is certainly not a talk about how the park was authorized. That was after the wonderful and excellent, strenuous work that Bill Pascrell did, getting that finally through Congress after 44 years of local effort of people trying to get the park recognized and declared as a national park. This park is about two people that had really kind of the building blocks to creating a park, and that's Mary Ellen Kramer and John Young. Mary Ellen Kramer, many of the people listening certainly know about the valuable activities that she had in getting this park established, but very few people will have even heard about John Young. In fact, I was surprised when I talked to Jack DeStefano. He did not know who John Young was. Darren Bach, the park superintendent, also was not aware of John Young. And so I'm happy to try to give this talk to honor both of those people. And I had called John Young back in last year, towards the end of the year, and told him I wanted to give a talk about the foundation of the park and asked if he would participate. And he very willingly did agree to participate. However, when I called him very recently, or I actually sent him an email back in a few days ago, and I got a response from his wife, Deborah Nasios. Just a minute, and yes, and it was on April 12th that I sent that email, and she informed me. I was very sad to hear that John Young, on March 28th, after a long battle with non-Hodgkin with leukemia, passed away. He died, and he was 89 years old. And I decided that I still wanted to do this talk and do it in his honor. And so that's why I'm here today. Shortly after I heard that, his wife received a phone call from one of the original Urban Deadline. Urban Deadline was the group that John formed from Columbia graduate students. An original member of that Paterson team called and heard about my planning to do a talk and asked if he might say a few words about John Young. And I gladly agreed and will call upon him in a few minutes. I'd like to start by going back to after to not July 1973, when I received this letter, and the letter was addressed to Mary Ellen Kramer, Frank Blesso, and the Great Falls Committee. And this letter is from the Chrysler Awards Committee. The Chrysler Corporation decided to have a nationwide competition for something called Innovation in Design. And they got together about over 130 people to get nominations for groups or individuals to submit an application for the competition. They had many specialists develop that group, and so I received this notice, and again, Mary Ellen at the time had just recently died, and I was left by myself to decide what to do. I decided to put together an application for the committee, the Great Falls Committee, and I also decided to add John Young's name. I found out that he had, in talking with John, he said, yes, I did submitted your name, and but it would be without adding his name to the group. This is the application that I put together, and it's pretty detailed, and it includes even a video of the wonderful tour director that we had by the name of Grace George, a retired school teacher from Eastside High, who gave these very wonderful homey talks about the district and the falls. So this application was submitted, and unfortunately, it was not one of the they had received over 100 applications, and we were not considered, but the application itself has a lot of documentation about what happened and what was done to try to get recognition for the Great Falls area. And back in 1966, I'd like to talk about the first effort to get national recognition for the park. Next. This is D. Stanton Hammond. He was a PhD and a very well-regarded scholar and historian for Paterson. He also was the school principal at School 20 on 20th Avenue. In 1966, he put together an application to have the Falls area display. He tried to get it as a national historic landmark, and it took about 9 months later. They would not consider it as a national landmark, but they did declare it as a national natural landmark. And so that was the first recognition, federal recognition of the area. Right at the same time, after Pat Frame, I'd like to show next. At the same time, there was an election to be held for the mayor's office. At that time, the form of government was a strong mayor form of government, but there was a limit in the number of terms. You could only serve 2 terms. And Frank Graves had been the mayor for 2 terms. And he was a very strong law and order type mayor, running to every fire and every involved at the police station, and very active. And but he could no longer run for mayor. But he was able to handpick the candidate for the Democratic Party, and he handpicked the person who happened to be the chair of the Paterson Housing Authority. The Housing Authority also was the urban renewal agency at the time. The chair of the Housing Authority was John Wagner, but the real campaign and the activities were really carried on by Frank Graves, and that was at the same time that Pat Kramer decided to run. And one reason he decided to run was at the time there were a lot of concern and activities that the administration under Frank Graves was involved in, a lot of controversies. There were allegations of corruption and voter intimidation, and there were a lot of things that were going on at the time. And I'd like to show the next slide. About Paterson was a book written by Christopher Norwood that has a very excellent category description of the activities and the battle between not really Frank Graves, but Frank Graves was carrying on the battle for John Wagner. Frank Graves was kind of laying in wait for the next election where he might run again. At the time, it was a very rough battle. And this doesn't sound like a rough name, but Frank Graves would call Pat Kramer a Boy Scout. And there were other things going on. This book has a lot of details. I'm not going to get into any of the allegations, but Pat Kramer built his campaign as a reform mayor. He was going to help straighten out the city, and he was going to do that by bringing in new experienced professionals to help run the administration of the city. And in doing that, he had help from several of the local business people. There was an organization called Forward Paterson, and they were trying to improve and develop the city. And they went about recruiting other professionals to run departments of the city. They ended up, for finance, they ended up at New Rochelle. They found Dick Moore as the finance director. They went to Minneapolis and they ended up with a man called Clarence Bechtel to run code enforcement and really take over the building department, though that wasn't his title. The third person in the police department, they went all the way to Phoenix, Arizona, and they ended up with what the job was going to be public safety director. They recruited Paul Bloombaum, who had been the police chief of Phoenix. Some of these things didn't actually work out. I'll just talk about the, in his situation, the public safety director in New Jersey does not have any real control over the public safety functions. The police and fire chief have tremendous control and responsibility over the police department and fire department. Back on the recruiting for redevelopment, they ended up with John O'Malley from Paterson, I'm from New Britain, Connecticut, who ran the New Britain Redevelopment Agency. And that's where I came in. I came into Paterson because of John O'Malley. I was born in Hartford, Connecticut, and I grew up, went to the University of Connecticut, got a degree in civil engineering, and ended up working for two consulting engineering firms. And one of them, the second firm, did work for the Paterson, where again, I keep getting confused with my old names, working for the New Britain Redevelopment Commission. I was hired because I had worked on with the engineering company doing their project improvement design, John O'Malley recruited me to come work because he wanted to get an engineer and planner on staff to help and try to reduce some of the engineering costs from outside consultants. And I had been there for 5 years and was working there. And one day, John, this was the summer, sometime in the summer of 1967, John came into my office and he had a letter. The letter was from Marty Sukernick, who was the chair of the Broadway Bank in Paterson and the head of Forward Paterson. And they wanted John O'Malley to come and talk with them and to be interviewed to head up the redevelopment program. John and I both went down for a preliminary look, and John then went down for the complete interview and was offered and accepted the position of new redevelopment director in Paterson as part of the reform that Pat Kramer had run on. John's started in the fall of 1967 and offered me, and I accepted and came along as his deputy in actually January 1968. Next. This is a picture of Route 80 crossing Main Street. That's the east side of Main Street. And I was really looking for what I saw when I first came to Paterson. I saw this abutment. Route 80 had been built from the George Washington Bridge right up to that East Main Street line. And there were 2 abutments with 4 lanes of highway on each hanging in midair. There were no span over the main street. All the traffic had to get off at Madison Avenue. And this must have created a lot of consternation from not only Patersonians, but people wondering, when is Route 80 ever going to be finished? How is it going to serve Paterson? What's it going to look like? What properties are going to be acquired? And at this time, the highway department had this map, which I like to show it. Next. This is a section of the preliminary planning map for the connector that was going to be part of the Route 80 construction. When they built the continuation of Route 80 past Main Street, this was the connector that was going to go from Route 80 right along and actually through the Falls area and connect up with McLean Boulevard. Now, this was from the business standpoint, the point of view, they tied this into their redevelopment idea. But let me just talk for a minute about the boundary of what is now the Great Falls Historic District is shown on that map in the dotted line. And in blue, you can see the 3 levels of the raceway. The upper raceway, as you may know, is a mile-long 3-tier system with an upper race, a middle race, and a lower race. And at each raceway, there was the ability to draw water off from the raceway to run a water turbine and to have the turbine run machinery for a plant to build the equipment and build things. And that was part of the original concept of Hamilton, who hired Pierre L'Enfant. I'm not going to get into that, as many people know the idea, but this raceway was part of the guts of the idea to build the first industrial city for industrial purposes. The raceway was going to be, as you can see from the spaghetti that's shown there, completely eliminated. But more importantly, also to be eliminated were numerous mill buildings. Many of them, however, were underutilized. A few were vacant because they were no longer being used for industrial purposes. But there was quite a bit of displacement without getting into individual buildings. But as you can see, numerous buildings, not only industrial, but other mixed use would be eliminated and purchased and demolished to make this a connection system. And next, I'd like to show the downtown redevelopment plan. Now, I guess it had to be hired by the Housing Authority Division of Urban Renewal. They hired a planner by the name of Victor Gruen. Victor Gruen was a Austrian architect, and he kind of built his name as one of the pioneers in encouraging the development of interior malls, downtown malls on Main Street. He's a pioneer in that. And the planning firm that was working on the downtown redevelopment incorporated his concept for Paterson's downtown. And I was unable to find a map showing the illustrative plan for the redevelopment, but this was the first stage of redevelopment. Now, this first redevelopment project was very successful in getting $11 million to do the first stage of development. And the plan itself, I'll describe Victor Gruen's concept. It was for a 5-lane loop road. And I've outlined the map. This 5-lane road is the loop around in red. And also in the plan, he was proposing to close the 3 most significant streets in the downtown. Main Street, the vertical street going up on the map that you're looking at, and then in green. And then the top street was Broadway, and by its name, you can tell it's important. And then the lower street going across in green is Market Street. And to top it all off, he proposed crossing the 2 interior streets, a bridge over Van Houten and Ellison Street. A very aggressive plan. Actually, it proved to be too aggressive because the other important part of the plan that's not shown on the map was to be ringed with 5 or 6 parking garages attached to the loop. But the real thing about this is that this loop road, if you show the next slide, please. The loop road, it's kind of, you can't really see it. It's in the lower part of the historic district, but the ramps are, I'm trying to point to it, but that's not going to help. But it's the loop road is connecting right to the pointed off yellow piece of road with a direct connection to the highway system. So the business people, most of them were in strong preference, waiting for this connector and the business and to be connected to the downtown loop road. They kind of looked at this as the panacea to their problems. Willowbrook was about to open. Paramus Park was going strong, and they thought this was going to be the help of bringing suburbanites into Paterson from the northern side of Ridgewood and so on. So they were strongly in favor of this. And Pat Kramer believed that it would help economic development and also had to act on the pressure to get Route 80 finished and with the downtown connection. And there's a circle around the map that shows that when he approved that plan, and I'm looking to get the exact date. It's May 8th, 1968. But whenever he approved that plan, as soon as he approved that plan, the highway department went to work on buying property. The head of the property acquisition was a guy from Wayne. His name was Jim Hyde, and Jim Hyde was very good at his job. He went ahead and they started getting appraisals and began buying property. And in some cases, they had already demolished properties. Now I'd like to talk about Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen, just a minute. She was very active in many cultural activities for Paterson. She took a major role in Pat Kramer's administration involving all kinds of activities. And but in doing that, she became very concerned about the highway proposal and the highway acquisition. And she had heard about activities or concerns about in the Cross Bronx Expressway. That was a lot of complaints in the news about how it destroyed the South Bronx. And in looking at this acquisition and the amount of demolition that was going to take place, became concerned and started talking with to other architects and writers and people involved in preservation, and wanted to find out how we could somehow minimize the destruction that was going to happen. And she was ended up talking with even federal officials, trying to get information as to how we might mitigate some of these activities, that some of the destruction that the ramping and highway would cause. Next, Mary Ellen, as I said, was involved in activities. This is part of something she had created, was Art in the Park in East Side Park, and which brought a lot of gave local artists the opportunity to show their works, and was quite successful in attracting a lot of visitors to Paterson at the same time. When some of the people that Mary Ellen talked to, they advised her, look, you need to get a consultant that was involved in historic preservation, that knows about it, and try to get them to develop some kind of plan to make these changes to the highway construction. Next slide. And this is John Young. John Young, in 1967, he was a graduate, actually an older graduate student, and working in the historic preservation program that had been created by James Marston Fitch, a pioneer architect in that historic preservation development. And he had suggested that John go over to Paterson and take a look at this great array of industrial buildings. He said it might be a topic for your master's thesis. And so John came over by himself and began working on looking at the area and started to develop some ideas and thoughts about how this area, these buildings, first must be documented and evaluated, and how they might fit in with this highway constructions. At the same, now I'd like to talk about what the group that John Young assembled, and I hope Tyler Smith is available to talk. Tyler Smith was one of the architectural students that John had brought along, and from the group Urban Deadline. Heather, is Tyler Smith on mine? Is he available?
Frank, yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Well, great. I've enjoyed your comments here, and I want to first of all say how honored I am to be invited to say some words about John Young, and I'm delighted to do so. So here is a little summary of the run-up of John and how he got to a position where he and Mary Ellen were so influential in making it all happen at Paterson. So let me start. Texas to Columbia. John Young was not one who had a great interest in talking about himself or his many accomplishments. So any effort on my part to fully describe John is very likely to be part real, part myth, and part speculative. Please also note that while I remained in occasional contact with John through the decades, I was only directly but intensively involved with John from the post-Columbia strike days of April 1968 through my active involvement with Urban Deadline into early 1971. John was born in Odessa, Texas in 1936. I believe his father was a carpenter and a jack of all trades, and in John's teen years, they traveled around West Texas, taking carpentry jobs where they could find them. One such job might have sparked the lifetime interest in what we now call historic preservation. I believe John and his father were hired to work on the restoration of a 19th century plantation house purchased and restored by the Texas philanthropist Ima Hogg. John joined the Army Corps of Engineers in 1953 to 1956, where he became an expert in the concrete construction. Years later, in many of the Urban Deadline projects, John would design and construct components in concrete and say with considerable pleasure, because it will be harder for anyone to demolish. In 1962, he received an undergraduate degree from Rice University, and in 1963, a Bachelor of Architecture degree. Somewhere along this timeline, John must have come across the book written by James Marston Fitch entitled American Building. Fitch was one of the building blocks of the modern preservation movement, emanating from the demolition of New York's Penn Station in 1963. Fitch went on to establish the first master's program in historic preservation at Columbia University. John moved his wife and 3 children, Marco, Lila, and Nina, to New York in 1967 to join Fitch's master's program. Tragically, shortly after giving birth to their 4th child, Dara, John's wife died of cancer. John, the sole parent of 4 young children, immersed in Fitch's graduate program and somehow navigating his way forward. Switched to Columbia Strike and to Urban Deadline to Paterson. In the week of April 23, 1968, Black students at Columbia University occupied Hamilton Hall in protest of racism, the Vietnam War, and Columbia University's tactics as a landlord in Morningside Heights. The university issued a directive that all students should leave the campus. A significant number of students in the School of Architecture, which held most of its classes in Avery Hall, voted to occupy their building in support of the Black students. The architecture students, in particular, opposed the university's intention to build a gymnasium in a public park, Morningside Park, in New York City. Over the course of the next week, there were endless debates and discussions on the tactics and objectives related to architecture and the role of the architect in society. One of the clearest and most persuasive voices in these discussions was that of John Young, who most of us were meeting for the very first time, as John Young, along with Adele Chatfield Taylor, were graduate students in the newly initiated master's program that held most of its classes elsewhere. After the bust on April 30th, 1968, a small group of us started to meet regularly, our Monday night meeting, at John Young's apartment on the Upper West Side to discuss architecture and the role and responsibility of the architect. Again, John's voice pointed the way. We design and build, most always engaged in the renovation of existing buildings. Thus, Urban Deadline was formed. From both a philosophical and pragmatic standpoint, Urban Deadline was shaped by the thinking and multiple skills of John Young. For one, John was several years older than most of his colleagues in Urban Deadline. More importantly, he had far more hands-on construction experience than the rest of us. And in addition to being a talented designer and a licensed architect, he clearly understood the social and cultural benefits of preservation and adaptive reuse. It can certainly be argued that as a direct result of the studies and work John Young initiated under Professor Fritz's preservation program and carried forward to Urban Deadline, that landmark projects such as Skirmerhorn Row at Manhattan South Street Seaport is still with us today, and more to the point, and as we are now hearing, that the natural and physical wonders of Paterson's Great Falls National Park are being acknowledged, enjoyed, and reviewed. So thank you very much, John, for all you did and your role, particularly in this great effort in Paterson. And it was a pleasure to be part of it in a small way. Back to you, Frank.
Thank you. Thank you, Tyler. On the screen, it shows the picture with the Avery's on strike, and that's a picture of John and Urban Deadline supporting that strike. On the right side of the screen is a citation from the Citizens Union of the City of New York, and that's just to show that Urban Deadline had worked on several other projects and for nonprofit groups and citizens groups, and they were really advocacy planners, and they looked for projects that were either low budget or sometimes no budget, and to try to help these groups complete their architectural work. And when Mary Ellen heard about that, that was a perfect fit to have someone like that become interested in Paterson and take Paterson on as a project. As you might say that they were perfect, like peanut butter and jelly, the way they went together. At this, I was in Paterson only about 7 months when in 1968, when they Mary Ellen walked into my office in the redevelopment had a small room in City Hall at the time, and Mary Ellen came in with about 6 or 7 urban deadline people. And John Young and actually Tyler was one of them. And they were there because they needed maps and other information so they could start working on their plans for the city. And I provided that information, and that was my first contact with them. And so John Young and Urban Deadline began working on and investigating and the plan for trying to adapt and make some changes to the highway and still salvage the buildings and still serve the downtown. One of the first next while doing that and researching and documenting the buildings, John developed the information that was needed and probably did his most important work effort in the time that he was in Paterson was the development of the application to the National Register of Historic Places. The front page is shown on your screen. And this application was not for a building, not for a structure or a site, but for a district. And it was for an 89-acre district. And it had, in that district was the things like a waterfall, a mile-long 3-tier raceway, and at least 40 unique industrial buildings, all individuals. And he documented that and assembled all this information to back up this nomination form. Next. It's just a part of the story is the ability to talk about and an effort to make changes in the highway while not eliminating the highway or causing that the highway not to be built. When it came time to finish the last section where you list the names of the preparer of the application, the work was, all the application was totally prepared by John Young. But Mary Ellen wanted to show that this application had the support of citizens, and although it was not the official submission by the city of Paterson. And so that who to sign the application, we ended up with several people. Leo Fichtelberg was the Paterson Library Director. My name was listed for the Paterson Redevelopment Agency. John Young, of course, was on there, and D. Stanton Hammond, the historian, was on there, and so on. the application ended up, it was being submitted dated October 14, 1968. This was after the highway acquisition had been, the map had been signed by Pat Kramer and the acquisition was proceeding. Meanwhile, the group that Mary Ellen had assembled, they were involved in fact, that may have been the first impetus for the group. At the time, Passaic County had bought land in Wayne for their first community college. Passaic County Community College was going to be built on this large tract of land in Wayne. And a lot of the Patersonians were very concerned about that. They felt that that college should be in Paterson. That's where the biggest need is. That's where the biggest amount of students would be coming from. And they were very concerned and were trying to find what could be done to try to make some changes to that proposal. And so Mary Ellen invited me to attend a group meeting, and I believe the purpose of this group was really spawned by the community college proposal for Wayne. I went to the meeting, and there were maybe 15 or 18 people that I had never seen before. But one person did stand out in that group, and it was a school teacher from Paramus Catholic, and his name was Bill Pasquale. And Bill Pasquale was Bill Pasquale as he was all his life, outspoken and aggressive and with good ideas, and taking a major role in this meeting. At that meeting, out of that meeting came a discussion and a suggestion that John Young and Urban Deadline take a look at the historic district and to explore the possibility, maybe a site could be developed to present to the Passaic County officials about the community college. The second meeting that I attended with Mary Ellen was in John Young's apartment. This was a group of this, and several of the other committee members from Paterson attended this meeting in his apartment. It's on the Upper West Side. And at that time, John had presented, had drawn, this is one of the drawings of the proposed location for the community campus on Ryle Avenue. And this is, do we have another one? Okay. John had drawn two sketches for locations utilizing the existing buildings and with some new construction. And these sketches were used to try to generate a change from the Passaic County freeholders. And although we had generated some interest, there was really no way that they were going to not proceed with the construction in Wayne. But in the long run, after a couple of, only 2 years, the redevelopment plan was successful when Art Dwyer became interim mayor after Pat Kramer went to run community affairs in Trenton. We did develop a site, and the community college was constructed in downtown Paterson in the redevelopment area. They did reuse a major building from the former telephone company equipment structure. A 7-story building became part of the new community college that was it is functioning today in Paterson, along with our other satellite units. The Great Falls Committee was still interested in the highway, and Mary Ellen was still very active. And we had developed from John Young as next. This was another slide from the proposals for the community college. John Young and Urban Deadline did prepare a sketch showing a reduced boulevard type of highway with fewer ramps and less highway taking. But the highway department, we did meet with them, and there was not any interest in making any changes. Even the redevelopment office, we were able to get some pro bono work from the engineer designing the first piece of the loop road to also do some sketches of a reduced highway and with less disruption. And that was also presented in Trenton to the highway group, but we were not successful in getting any real consideration of that. Also, we did not have, we weren't there as the official representative of the mayor. We were just there as a group of citizens. But regardless, there wasn't going to be any change in the highway, no matter who was presenting it. Until this is when the thunderbolt comes in. I asked Heather for that kind of slide, because on September, it was 20 months later, but the Department of Interior agreed that the nomination form that John Young had put together was very appropriate and necessary for the Department of Interior to put it onto the National Register as a historic district, an 89-acre district. The date of that entering on the district was April 17, 1970. And that's when everything changed for the highway department. All of a sudden, with being on the district, they had to conform to federal law about federal recognized properties, and especially districts. They stopped acquisition immediately. They had to prepare and examine all possible alternatives for the highway. What could be done to cause minimum disruption or impact on the district. And not only was the highway department certainly upset, many of the people that many Patersonians were upset, especially people that were in the highway right-of-way, property owners in the highway right-of-way that had been counting on their property to be purchased. Some of them were hurt by that decision. But in the end, after stopping to evaluate all the alternatives, we were able to, the highway did end up having a committee meeting with local people to decide how, what could be done and what other alternatives could be done, even though they were severely affected by the nomination form being entered. I'm going to jump now to Mary Ellen's activities. Because the property was on the National Register, it got even more interest. And she decided to do some work on the area right at the top of the falls. At the top of the falls, at that time, next. I want to talk about, this is a slide from John Young's proposal to Columbia and to us, to the Paterson residents. And this showed a walkway along a hydroelectric plant at the falls. Next. This showed, it's called the view from Monument Hill. I believe this is actually the view from the top where Hinchliffe Stadium is, the hill, the area that we're now called the Vista and Project, but it's across from the Passaic River. And this is a view of the ATP site and other buildings in that area and how they might be incorporated with new use and a walkway along the Passaic River. Next, this was John's sketch about the Ivanhoe Mill. That's at Spruce Street, and with the other Cook Mill and other mills in the background. Next. This is another sketch along the upper race and one of many. Next. Those were one of many in John's proposal of the whole industrial district. One of the things that John also did as an aid for the city and its development, he created this poster for the whole district that identified by name and location many of the important buildings, and we're able to get a grant to fund that and to so it could be distributed to area visitors and used for development. John Young also, besides his plan for the district, he was involved in other activities on his own without any suggestions from the city. One activity that he did, a major activity, was that he saw the condition of the Van Houten House in West Side Park. The Van Houten House, as many people know, is the oldest building in Paterson, the oldest existing structure built in 1741. And it's in the middle of West Side Park, and the roof was in terrible shape. And on his own, John Young, and with some help from Urban Deadline folks, but almost virtually single-handedly re-shingled with cedar shake shingles. That's a tough one, except for me to say anyway. And there's pictures of John. It happens to be Tyler Smith with John on the roof. but on his own, I don't know how, where he got the money, the shingles to pay for him. I don't know how it was done, but it got done through his efforts. Next. John also, and I wasn't really aware of this until recently, when looking at John's portfolio of work. He did quite a bit of work for the Model Cities program in Paterson, and looking at mills that were not in Paterson, like this is Van Houten and Mill Street, other mills in Paterson, for the possible conversion for affordable housing as a model cities project. And so that was another thing that again, without any fanfare, had done. Next. I'd like to just tell you about one personal story. My best friend, I had been in Paterson a year, and my best friend and his wife came down to visit. And of course, we took them to the falls and showed them the falls. And then we walked across the street to the Ivanhoe wheelhouse. And I noticed that the door was open to the wheelhouse. And so we went inside. And inside was John Young in his shorts in the bottom of the wheel pit, doing something on a Sunday. And apparently that was part of his effort that, again, I don't think anyone knew about. He was doing, this is a detailed drawing of the truss of the Ivanhoe wheelhouse. And it kind of just shows the amount of detail and his work ethic in studying and putting on paper things that had to be done for the renovation of the building. And so I just thought that this was a good example to show of his, not only of his work, but working on a Sunday in something that really didn't have anything to be done with his project, except that he thought that it needed and went ahead and did it. Next. Yeah, this is the area at the top of the falls. You can see the arch bridge. This was one of John's sketches. But this was the area, and I was looking for a photo of the area from in 1970 era or before, and I couldn't find one, because this was the area that Mary Ellen decided need to be worked on. It doesn't look like it from this sketch, but so you have to imagine this as being overgrown, being fenced in, not accessible to the public. And Mary Ellen went to town and got volunteers and contractors to donate services, and cleaned up that area and made it accessible. And one of the major things she was able to do was to convince the that the Passaic County Water Commission that the arch bridge that's on everyone's photographs of the falls, that the arch bridge, which had was carrying a pipe across the falls. That was the reason in 1890 for that bridge to be built, was to carry a water pipe because of the early water company needed to carry that white pipe water to a new reservoir, which is now the Levine Reservoir. But that bridge, when it was built, was to carry pedestrians. And also, not only the water pipe, but pedestrians. But in 1917, World War I was underway, and there was a concern for sabotage, that the water system might be sabotaged or other nefarious things might happen. So they removed the deck to this Paterson Arch Bridge. And Mary Ellen talked to the Water Commission and said, we should really get this back and restored for pedestrians to cross. And Wendell Limhofer, who was both superintendent and chief engineer, was very cooperative with the Water Commission. And I didn't know for sure until I read in the program for what became the Falls Festival, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But this bridge was part of the work that Mary Ellen, the bridge pavement, the deck was put back with railings, and the work was done by Conduit Construction. I don't know if they were contractors for the Water Commission or how they were arranged, how we got them, or who paid them, or how they did it, but it got done through Mary Ellen's effort. And after this area was cleaned up, Mary Ellen had the idea that just a minute. And now that it was cleaned up, let's show it off now that people can get access to that area to go across the falls. She just had the idea to create a festival. And on Labor Day, that Labor Day weekend, she and the group of citizens that she had gathered around her drew up a program for the Falls Festival. That was to be, and it was, a 5-day festival. And this is the cover of a supplement that the Paterson News put together, a 12-page supplement that had the history of Paterson, of the falls and of the area, and it described the program for the festival. Next, the back of that program was a list of people who were sponsors and advocates of the festival, and that Mary Ellen had put together. And just a picture, just looking at that picture shows the interest that she was able to generate and the support for the area and for her ideas that she had generated. My name is on that, and that I'm proud to say that my name on that grouping for the festival program. Next, one of the items on Saturday night, as you can see the names, the Big Band Festival, Duke Ellington, Tito Puente, Jimmy Dorsey, Bob Everly, famous Ron Monroe, famous singers from that period and earlier, appeared in Hinchcliffe Stadium, and it just shows that she was able to draw that kind of event as part of the festival. Next, I of course attended the festival, and I received as a gift a Super 8 film camera, silent camera, and I took some video of the Falls Festival, and I'd like to show that so you can get the idea of this first off, that's the helicopter, state helicopter, bringing Governor Cahill for the opening ceremony of the festival, and that's Pat Kramer walking toward in the tan, walking over to greet the governor. And this is some of the crowd assembled on that Friday. That's happens. My family just wife and two sons just went past, but there's a very large crowd assembled across that whole area, and there had been a large storm before that. Really one of the most magnificent flows I've ever seen at the festival that we were fortunate enough to record. And one of the activities of the festival this was every night there was an aerial act, the motorcyclists doing a spinning act with a person hung underneath. I have some other festivals that videos of subsequent year. I'll show those later. This is a photograph taken by actually from I think it's from Urban Deadline, but of the flow that same time period. Next. This is John Young and two of the Urban Deadline architects that were at the festival. And again, you can see the flow and see that really such a beautiful setting that was made available. And this is again on the festival, the first crowd of people to cross that pedestrian bridge. I could talk a long time about that pedestrian bridge and about the Water Commission. That really should be a talk for another time, and that the Water Commission, I'll briefly say the Water Commission ended up removing that bridge, that pedestrian deck, and installing a pipe on that bridge, and then creating a new pedestrian bridge where they had previously had supports for a suspended pipe, and that bridge is now has to be replaced, but the Water Commission is not cooperating with any financial assistance in the replacement of that bridge. And I would like to call that to everyone's attention. But all right, I'll proceed now. Next. After the festival, the group that had been put together for the festival, Mary Ellen organized that group into the Great Falls Development Corporation. And that was shortly after the festivals. And it was a public nonprofit membership. And it was designed with a 26-member board of directors. And they were to advise and help with plan the development of the area. That 26-member group also included 10 members from the city government at the time. Mary Ellen and I were both members, of course. While I see it and while I remember the Great Falls logo that you see, one of the persons who went and looked for a designer to develop a logo for the corporation was Jack Stockbus, who was a planner in the in the planning division. And he found an artist who designed that logo. I always loved that old logo. Jack ended up marrying that artist, but Jack was a big assistant to Mary Ellen and the corporation and I like to just give him some recognition. He was a big help to me, and I'll talk about later on in working on the program for the civil engineering landmark and other activities for the project in the corporation. And Jack went on to become, after he left Paterson, become a HUD undersecretary, very prominent position in Washington with HUD. We can keep that slide for a moment. You can put me on full screen when you get a chance. In getting together, I have a lot of files and things that I've kept in getting together for this talk. I came across, this is a membership list of the Great Falls Development Corporation. It's not dated, but I think it's 1974. And this is 15 pages. It was so, to me, impressive. And I counted there are 368 members in the Great Falls Development Corporation in 1974. And that's just testament to Mary Ellen's ability to encourage people, to attract them, and to get them to want to participate and join things that she was interested in. And so I just thought that that should be recognized. Mary Ellen did many things in her effort to get the area recognized. She had much contact with the Smithsonian Institution, and she was able to get the chief curator for civil and mechanical engineering to come up and visit Paterson. And one of his statements that I wanted to just recover, there's no other American city has the prospect for the imaginative development of a historically important industrial area that is now Paterson's. And Robert Vogel was a key man in the Park Service also, and to have him in is a big help in getting the recognition. And Mary Ellen was able to get other Park Service people involved, and especially by getting the Park Service, next slide, the Park Service has a big section called the Historic American Engineering Record, HAER, H-A-E-R, and they agreed to do a full summer's work of surveying and activities for the area, all through her effort. And I'll talk a little bit later about one of the projects that was in that survey, but it was a survey that documented the buildings and made measure drawings of the map and did archaeology. Next, I'd like to talk about the Rogers Building. Route 80, the design of the connector highway and its connection to Route 80, one of the major reasons for that construction was to carry the drainage from Route 80 to the Passaic River. And they had designed in that original plan a 66-inch storm drain. It was going to be built by open cut. And that means to just dig in the ground as deep as you need to lay the sewer line and put the line in and fill it in, not yet. In order to do that, they, even before the highway plan was presented, corridor plan was presented to the city for Route 80, they had started acquisition to acquire land outside, not in the full district, but they acquired land for that to start that drain line. And in order to do that, they acquired the boiler room for this building. This is the Rogers Building. They acquired and demolished the boiler room for that building to get ready to run the drain pipe. I also demolished another building across the street from the part of the Grant locomotive. But this building now was left without a boiler room, but Mary Ellen had some ideas, and since the building was no longer functionally usable at that time, without major investment, and it was going to be acquired ultimately for the highway, she convinced the owner to donate that building to the Great Falls Development Corporation. And that was just another example of her persuasive powers. And so that, as you probably know, that's now the Rogers Museum, and it's an office building run by managed by the Great Falls Development Corporation. I'd like to get back to the hair work and archaeology. Because the highway department had to stop the highway design, they also had to do archaeological investigations of anywhere where they were going to do proposed constructions in the district. And they, because of that, they contracted with the Great Falls Development Organization. They knew how important it was that they were involved in this project, and they agreed to have them hire the archaeology and the group to do the studies that were required for any public project with federal funds. And so the Great Falls hired the archaeological group. The group was headed by Ed Rutch, who became, as a result of this, very involved with industrial archaeology, and as a result, created the Society for Industrial Archaeology to be a national organization. And they did extensive work. They created many artifacts that were delivered to the Historical Society, and documented a lot of work in their records. one of the things that to me is most interesting or kind of exciting is they uncovered the tail race of the middle race. Now, as a quick explanation, when a factory received water from the raceway, there was a flume or conduit to carry water, and that water turned to a water wheel, and the discharge went into what's called the tail race. Then it got used again in the middle race. But anyway, in the archaeological work, they uncovered the tail race to the middle race, which ran along and it runs along Market Street across from the bus garage on that north side of Market Street. And show the slide, please. This is the actual tail race of the middle race, and with John Young as the lead with the these are members of the archaeological team and the hair group, not necessarily Urban Deadline that I'm aware of. But this is such a fantastic picture to me that they were able to discover that and to document it. So fantastic that I always was sorry that I was not able to see that, but I did get the opportunity in 2006 when redevelopment and reuse was being made of the Rogers Administration Building. George McLoof was the developer at the time, and I was able, because John Franco, our committee, our historic preservation director, had to go in or wanted to go in to see about connections that were being made from the McLoof new renovation. And so we went down, I accompanied him down, and this is the picture of me in the raceway. I finally did get to explore it. The other pictures show a rather kind of scary, if you just take a look at this is John Franco, and take a look at some of the things that we were stepping in. I imagine, I don't doubt whether anyone else would ever be permitted to go in without full-blown equipment and protection. But we were exited very safely. But it was just I was happy to see that for myself. Next. All right, now I'd like to talk about an event that actually Mary Ellen, John, and I were together involved. We were meeting together, and Mary Ellen had come, and she had brought some documents that she received in the mail from the National Endowment of the Arts, and they had created a competition, a grant competition for nonprofits to come in for some type of program related to the arts. And she brought the application form to our meeting and said, you know, we should submit an application for this. You know, we could come up with something, and we're there for quite a while. And after a while, she came up with the idea, well, we have the hydroelectric plant. That plant was built in 1917, and it was built along with a steam generation plant. and that was really to make electricity that could be ultimately reused and replace really the raceway with electricity. But in 1967, or maybe it was earlier, there was a storm, and the plant, which had been operated by the PSE&G, had suffered some damage to the penstocks down below, and they shut it down. And they had a nuclear plant on the drawing board, and this was in their small fish in their auditorium, or in their grouping, and they had no real interest in fixing the plant. And Mary Ellen convinced them to cancel their lease. They had leased the plant from the city, and she came up with the idea to let's do a study and see if that plant can be renovated, what it would cost, and see if that can be justified. Let's ask for a grant for that study. And so I put together the application, and we submitted it under a Great Falls Development Corporation, and we got funded for that application. And we actually turned that over to the city, and the city took the ball with that. And after we handled it until the application showed that it was feasible and possible, and we turned it over to the city, who got a further grant to do the detailed drawings. And we ended up, after several years, with the plant being completely renovated. We can show next. When I say renovated, I'm talking about the interior equipment. It was replaced with 3 new turbines that doubled the capacity, and they did keep one of the original units for display purposes. And that public tours can be arranged. It takes a little bit of work, but we do have the capacity. Park Service does have the capacity to run tours through that, and it probably would be more tours if the Park Service was able to justify the staff capability to handle that. Next, one thing, let's see. No, let's go on to the next. When I put together the application about the Mary Ellen and the committee, I listed and put in copies in the book of all these articles that Mary Ellen had generated. The first one I'd like to talk a little bit about. It was really the proposed Adele Chatfield Taylor, who was a major player in Urban Deadline, and she had written up about John's proposal for Paterson, and it was published in Architectural Forum, a major magazine. And I'd just like to recognize that as significant publicity and a very fine documentation of what was going on in Paterson, what Paterson was trying to achieve. And that is available online through our Architectural Forum. But the other are just, I'm not going to read them. They'll be left on the website. Next. And this, of course, is President Ford when he came to dedicate the National Historic Landmark District. And I'd like to give recognition to Russell Fries, who had put together, let me just get to it in my notes. Russell Fries, who was a member of the original hair team and did extensive documentation on the buildings, especially their history. He was an historian from University of Maine, who was not then with the hair project. And because of the work that he had done in his background, the redevelopment office hired him to do what we thought was part of the development was getting the the district recognized for activities. And he put together the nomination form. We were really trying at that time, there was discussion, federal discussion about having an urban cultural park. And we said, well, we want to be considered for that. And he put together a voluminous package of information. I finally found it, 461 pages of maps and documentation in his application. And at that time, they were not going to consider us or anyone for an urban national cultural park, but they did suggest that we transform the application into an urban national historic landmark. And that's a very significant level over a historic district, is to become the district as a district landmark. And President Ford, as you could see in a great day for viewing, was there to dedicate that landmark. And the Kramer family hosted a very nice reception afterwards. But I don't have the number of people in it. Well, it was represented that at the fall site, there were 60,000 residents. The next thing I'd like to talk about are just other festival activities that Mary Ellen was really responsible for creating. I guess I can show, maybe take a little bit more of your time showing you some other activities from the early Falls Festival, just to get the view of the amount of people that the festival was bringing to Paterson. Okay, this is and this is again home movie footage that I took, and certainly not a professional, but it'll give you this is Carl Wallenda, probably the most famous in the 20th century, the most famous wire walker until Philippe Petit came along. And he was at the falls for this festival, and this is him going across from the upper level of the festival of the falls. And I guess I should report that unfortunately this is Carl Wallenda standing on his head, and a few years later he did fall from a wire in Puerto Rico and lost his and was killed. This is the Fourth Falls Festival. Again, this is the one where we were able to, through Marion's help, recruit Philippe Petit just a couple of weeks after he had made world headlines crossing between the Twin Towers. And this is Philippe Petit starting from the lower level. His walk, and most of the walks usually extend from the lower level to what is now the top Mary Ellen Kramer Park. And so this is Philippe Petit. And of course, that drew many people. I guess this is Carl. Just a minute. No, that's still Philippe Petit. I haven't viewed my own video in such a long time. This is Philippe Petit afterwards with the crowd. As going in Carly Parmelli's Lincoln convertible. One more Fifth Falls Festival. Again, we're fortunate to have a lot of water flowing over. Those are my kids, 3 sons. Francis and John and Matthew. And this is the Inner City Ensemble, a great dance organization for youth that was created at the same time. And became many of those dancers went on to become professional dancers. I wish I knew more information about them to comment on. And at every festival, they had, in the early days anyway, an antique auto show along with inside the Hinchcliffe Stadium was a large flea market. This is one thing that this guy just amazes me. Well, that was part of the Wire Act. Most festivals had a Wire Act. And this was a slide down the slide for life down the wire. I think that was Lemoyne doing that. He was okay. And this is Lemoyne again. He didn't just walk the falls once. I think he did it twice for each day of the festival. So that's a great accomplishment, to say the least. That's Pat Kramer. This again is giving out some Charles Parmelli, my mother. There's Charles Parmelli. And again, I apologize for this personal footage of my kids climbing over the fire engines, that's Matt, John. This is what I was talking about before. It's just something that I thought I wanted to show you. Has really nothing to do with Mary Ellen or John Young, but he recruited. He came to the festival because we organized the festival. And I just thought that was spectacular. Again, we're just fortunate to have all that water flowing for the visitors. Well, that completes the videos for the festivals anyway. Now I'd like to just mention some of the other events besides the festival that that were hired, that occurred at again, really because of Mary Ellen's activity. Tours, there was a 12-mile bike tour at the district, a winter walk, things like that. One thing I guess is very interesting, Mary Ellen assisted a local movie maker making his first movie. And he asked to use part for access to buildings. And so he shot a feature film using the Ryle House as the primary set. And she used the Rogers building without any, as it was unrestored. And it became the film Communion when he first showed it in the Fabian Theater, the Fabian Theater on Church Street, the original Fabian. It became the premiere for a movie that became Alice, Sweet Alice. Probably most known for the premiere of 12-year-old Brooke Shields. Next, please. This is an event or an item that I was directly involved in. Russell Freeze, when he did the first hair report, did extensive documentation about the raceway system. And it was a complete history. And I had been a member of ASCE, American Society of Civil Engineers, since I was a college student. And I knew that they had a program where they had listed national civil engineering landmarks. And I decided that the information that Russell had created should be turned into a nomination form. So I put together, based on his information, giving his full recognition, that the nomination form for a civil engineering landmark. And I had to process that through the state group of engineers and the national group, and it was approved as a civil engineering landmark. When the mechanical engineering group heard about that, they said, "Hey, we think that's important for us too. We tag along and we make it a mechanical engineering landmark too." And so it became a joint landmark. It may be the only joint landmark between the two engineering societies. I don't know, if there's a record of that. But I put together with a great deal of help from Jack Stockless, who I mentioned earlier. It included even a flyover that Congressman Bob Rowe, Air Force flyover that Bob Rowe had organized for the opening ceremony. And a friend of mine took a little video of that ceremony and of the area at the time. And the time was May 20, 1977. And Jack Stockvis had suggested that because that was the 50th anniversary of Lindbergh's flight across the Atlantic, and of course, in a Paterson Wright-built engine. Can we show the video? Oh, this is a slide where the landmark plaque had been placed, and a nice view of the spillway over the of the upper race. Now the video of this landmark celebration. That's Pat Kramer leading off the group. I'm not, no, that's me. I recognize that person, but still me. This was another ASCE member, and that's Doc Hammond in the background unveiling the plaque. And many officials from both national engineering societies. That's Doc Hammond there along with me. And that's my mother. And this is John Young, who was at the ceremony, ringing the bell. And they had some refreshments there for. So this is Mary Ellen, what is now Mary Ellen Kramer Park. Again, my mother and my wife, beautiful wife, Jacqueline. And a lot of people just enjoying themselves in the area. And this is Russell Freeze. I'm glad I do have a photo of him, of the grid. And that was Jack Stockvis with the land. And this is Russell Freeze. Again, Eric Deloney was very, very prominent in document and knowledgeable about bridges in the ASCE and nationally known. Great view of the spillway. And that's Falls View Diner, now the site of Burger King. And this is just to show you the renovation work. This is the chemically cleaning, the structure where the Rogers Building was chemically cleaned, the plaque. And this is an interior in the middle of the renovation work. The group from the ceremony was invited to come over and see that renovation work in progress. And so that's the end of the video. So I'll find my place and get back to talking. This slide is really well, I wanted to just I apologize for working around till I find my place. I'd like to talk about really the fact that the highway stopped acquisition was a major benefit for the city, especially for its redevelopment program. Uh, while the acquisition had stopped, and maybe I should, and this highway department was trying to come up with different alternatives. The redevelopment office created the Great Falls Historic District as an official redevelopment area. And once this enabled the city, very importantly, to acquire land that the highway department had bought. Once they determined what the ultimate connector plan was going to be, that land became surplus. And that surplus land, ordinarily, you have to offer it up at a public auction and sell it to the highest bidder. Because it was a redevelopment area, we had the legal ability to negotiate the sale of the property from the highway department. And so the redevelopment ended up purchasing at the land value, not the value that had a building on it, but at the land value of the vacant land and some of the properties that they acquired, the buildings had not been demolished and we acquired the buildings. So having as a redevelopment was a real benefit in making to utilize the surplus properties. And next show the list of developments. And from those surplus properties, the redevelopment, we bought the DOT land and we were able to plan the land use and negotiate selection of the developer. So this slide shows the type of development that was created. I've been given the sign to wrap up with. So I got the Oscars. So you can look at that afterward about the buildings that came about on that surplus highway land. Next, this is what's out there now. This is the plan that was negotiated and leaving virtually the entire historic district untouched after they stopped the highway, because of the landmark register nomination activity. Next. And I'd just like to conclude with a statement that Mary Ellen had made quite a bit of times and about that it was never to create a district with a defined boundary, like with a Williamsburg type development or purple ropes around them. Rather, the vision centered around the use of the falls as a gift of nature, an inspiration to enhance the surrounding area, build industry and jobs, attract visitors, build pride and vitality throughout Paterson and its neighbors. And so that's the end of my little talk. And I'd like to open it up if there are any questions. Turn it back to Heather.
Hi, Frank. Thanks so much for that. That was very, very thorough and amazing to sort of hear, from someone who was there and lived it. So we do have, I think, maybe a couple of comments that came in. Let's see here. Well, Mike just wanted to say that on June 6, 1976, he was at the falls when Ford visited. So thanks, Mike, for sharing that. Someone else is saying that they missed the very beginning of the presentation, but they're curious about the how the hyperlocal community felt about redevelopment and preservation. Did the area gentrify and become less affordable for the people already living in the historic district in that area? And how did those projects benefit the residents of Paterson?
Well, there was the historic district had very little residential use. And it improved the ability of residents to move into the area. On the slides is the artist housing project, where Regan Development took the Argus Mill and the Phoenix Mill and developed it into 144 units of affordable housing under the Section 8 rehabilitation program. And I'd just like to point out that we were able to, Section 8 is normally for only for individuals or families, and the individuals had to either be handicapped to qualify. But we were able to get a special exception for artists that met the income requirements for that Section 8 program to occupy the units in the artist housing. That's why it's called the artist housing project, because we were able to get an exception for them.
Right. All right. Mostly we've just got comments saying great presentation. So I guess you did a good job, Frank. Not too many questions. Bruce Cavan says, thanks for the trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
Glenn Corbett says, wonderful, Frank. Lots of important details for posterity. Karen says, kudos, excellent presentation. I learned a lot. And Kip Kramer says, the Kramer family wishes you, Frank, and me thank you for the beautiful presentation. Warm memories from many who cared. So
yeah, that's nice.
That
could I say a word?
Is that Tyler that would like to comment?
Yes. Most of all, Frank, I want to thank you for recording this history, and not only recording this history, but capturing the people and the stories behind it. And it's an amazing archive. And I just wanted to congratulate you for honoring Mary Ellen and John Young, because they did the work of an army and with great skill and complementary skills. And they ended up having to persuade armies of bureaucrats that maybe didn't agree with them. And when you showed, Frank, that sketch of John of the doing the trusses in the Ledoux building, it made me think that John later in life, in the late around 1988, was hired to document the roof trusses in Grand Central Station. And he spent nearly 2 years in that roof documenting every truss. And so every time I go to Grand Central, I look up at that celestial ceiling and think of John, and hope you all do as well. So thanks so much.
Oh, that's really neat. We do have one last question that came in, Frank. Jack said, can you speak about the political issues which prevented designation as a national park during the late 1970s when Lowell, Massachusetts became a national park?
He wants me to speak about that?
Well, I guess probably why we were having trouble, but they didn't.
I'll speak in one sentence. Lowell, Massachusetts had the muscle to get the designation through Congress. Only Congress can create the park. And they had the muscle to do that. That's all I'll say.
Okay. And on that note, thank you again, Frank, for an amazing presentation. It's so great for us to have this recorded for posterity. And thank you all for joining in. And
thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, no problem. And if you want to do that other one about the bridge, we can talk.
All right.
All right. Everybody have a lovely afternoon. Thank you.